In today's video, we're going to be diving into the upcoming pattern, taking a look at some up and down temperature swings. So we're going to see big warm-ups followed by big cool downs, and this is also going to bring in all sorts of nasty weather, including severe thunderstorms to the deep south central and southeastern states, some snowfall events as you go further north, even some ice storms, and overall the frequency of storminess will be going up versus what we saw earlier on in January. I think that's the biggest theme here. So let's go ahead and dive into things. And we're taking a look at the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook here from the National Weather Service. And what we can see, I guess the biggest change is that this warmth stretches all the way back to the southwest. It's really just a lot of the southern states in general. You might be thinking, I get this comment a lot where people are like, of course it's colder in the north and warmer in the south, but you have to consider that this is compared to the normal for each and every given location. So for northern Montana in the blue here, that is below what is normal for them during this February 2nd to 6th time frame. And for Florida, this is above normal for what's typically considered to be average there during this time frame as well. So we're just seeing a more extreme temperature difference from north to south, and typically this is the exact type of temperature pattern that I would watch out for during severe weather season. And I think that this is going to lead to some more elevated severe weather than we're typically used to in the winter time. We're starting out just a few days from now with some of that severe weather, and there could be multiple threats. So cold in the northwest and north central as well as the northeast here. Warmer than what's typical for the southwest, south central, and southeastern states. Precipitation on the rise for a lot of the nation, especially the west here, where they're seeing a very nice and very healthy uptick in the precipitation, but also areas across the Midwest, Ohio Valley, even some of the southern plains in here, seeing some of that above normal precipitation. The southeast could be a little bit below normal as well as the northwest. Let's take a look at the 8 to 14 day range. And what we're seeing for temperatures is a lot of the same. Especially the southeast here is quite warm compared to normal through the 4th through 10th time frame. And it's worth noting that this won't be purely warm. I don't expect pure warmth from the 1st through the 10th of February at all. There is going to be some colder days in there, but I think those colder days are going to be a lot closer to normal. These above normal days could bring us 10, 15 degrees above what's typical, and that's why we're going to see an overall warmer pattern on paper when you look at all of those days put together. Still quite cold for the northwest, north central, and southwestern states. Precipitation still looking quite elevated out west. Also for some similar areas, but now including areas further south and further east here, at least in the eastern half of the nation. Let's take a look at what the past 20 days have looked like. Again, in 2 days from now on Thursday, we're going to be able to look at the 30-day period and just see how January as a whole looks once we put it all together. But for now, we just have this 20-day period. We do see that there has been basically colder than normal conditions for 95% of the nation. We see a little bit of the areas in California there, a little bit of northern Montana and North Dakota, and then a bit of Maine here in the above normal temperature category. But outside of those three very specific locations, I mean, it has been very cold compared to normal, especially when you take the southern Rockies straight into the mid-Atlantic and southeastern states, and this does cross over the south central states. All of these regions were far below normal, even some areas breaking some records for January as far as how cold it was, and a lot of areas dealing with at least their coldest January in 5, 10, 15, 20 years or more. So very cold is basically been the trend. I don't need to tell you that. You've been outside, so you probably already know this. We do have a clipper system, as we're just looking at today on the model guidance, that is expected to move down into the northeastern states, and I know they just had some snowfall. Expect a little bit more from the system moving down, and it will bring some snowfall to the Great Lakes as well. That's the overall theme there. So let's see what happens by the time we're reaching overnight tonight into Wednesday. We do see some pretty heavy snowfall for upstate New York, especially areas there near the Great Lakes, but also the Adirondack Mountains straight into Vermont and New Hampshire, seeing some pretty moderate to heavy snowfall. So definitely worth noting. And that's going to be lasting a little while, as there's still some snowfall by tomorrow afternoon on Wednesday the 29th occurring there in the Northeast, as that low is just offshore. This is right around when we get our storm system building for the central states. Again, severe weather flaring up for Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana. And this is all coming as we get this really rich Gulf moisture and warmth moving northward. We have an area, a kind of like a cutoff area of pretty cold temperatures near the low pressure system. And all of this is combining to create a lot of instability, which is one of the bigger reasons why we have this thunderstorm and severe weather activity going on. We also see some snowfall for the southern Rockies during this event as well, kind of worth noting. As we move towards Friday afternoon on the 31st, we see a lot of this activity just prevailing. We see our low here nearby Ohio, a warm front up to the north here, and then a dragging cold front behind everything. Typically, these warm fronts are more associated with showery activity, even snowfall on the northern end. And then it's this cold front area where we'd be watching for the thunderstorms and potential severe weather. Definitely needs to be watched. Everywhere underneath the low, pay close attention because we could have some pretty impactful severe weather Thursday, Friday, and even into a little bit of early on Saturday for the East Coast. We do see our first kind of like northwest storm system moving on shore now, where we have snowfall across the Cascades, northern Rockies as well here. That is ongoing by this point. As we reach towards, let's see, this will be approximately 1 a.m. on Saturday. So yes, very early. We do have some of this thunderstorm activity and showers left over for Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia here. Vlog channel, we might have a first thunderstorm. I told you guys I'm going to try to vlog the first thunderstorm that I get this year. It hasn't happened yet. Between the last day of January here and February 1st, it might be our first thunderstorm, so very exciting stuff. We do see the Northwest still ongoing with this heavy snowfall across the Cascades, northern Sierra Nevada mountains, and then also the northern Rockies there. As we move towards the afternoon hour, we can see that snow is not really let up for most mountains, especially there in the more northern territories where we still have heavy snowfall, and then areas in lower elevations we're seeing heavier rainfall. A little bit of a colder period here for the east as we see this jet stream kind of dipping here. Again, you watch for these dips for the colder temperatures. We see out west we're kind of bubbling up a little bit. That's going to be indicative of warmer temperatures. And then it's this dipping that really leans towards colder temperatures. As we keep going towards Sunday on February 2nd, it's really just a lot of the same. We're going to kind of just glance at Sunday and move on. I want to take us towards Monday here on the 3rd. And it is, for the most part, the same. We do have a low over Wyoming, some snowfall out in the northwest. This does extend into a bit of the northern plains, though, and the upper Midwest, which is a little bit new. Lighter snowfall that lasts longer, so that might accumulate over time, especially if you're well below freezing, the ground especially. By Tuesday the 4th, still a lot of the same. Wednesday the 5th, the only thing that's changed, because we still have this storminess for the west, still some snowfall going on for the mountainous west, but we do have some showers and thunderstorms building for Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, Kentucky, perhaps Nebraska and Iowa as well. And this is because we've seen a complete flip in the temperature pattern. Again, now this bubble shape is more over the east, and we see that dipping going on more towards the west. So you could tell that the warmer temperatures are shifting eastward by this 5th time frame, and the colder temperatures are more over the west. So again, we're going to go back and forth quite a bit between the warmth and the cold for both the west and the east. Let's see if we get a more substantial storm down here in the south central states as we move towards the 6th, and we really do. We start to see some low pressure building, and it's meeting up with this jet stream right here. It's kind of linking up with it. We see a cold front trying to develop a clearly defined warm front way out to the east. So this is going to cause rising warmth and humidity from the Gulf again to set up to the east of that low underneath your warm front there, which is pulling it all northward. And then this colder air is trying to move in behind this cold front. And when that happens, we're seeing, first off, the cold and warm interaction, which causes a lot of instability. We all know this. Warm and cold mixing is what causes a lot of our bad severe weather and thunderstorms. So you have that factor there. Also, the cold front kind of side swiping that northern flow from the Gulf up northward will cause some rotation and overall shear, which also leads to a lot of damaging wind and tornadoes oftentimes. So that'll also kind of play into this severe weather which now we're looking at the second event of potential severe weather. The models for days have been trending at, 2 to 4 severe weather events over the next 2 weeks or so, which is just a crazy surge of activity for the time of year that we're in. Keep in mind, snowfall across the northern plains, upper Midwest, Northeast as well, ongoing with this storm also. By Friday the 7th of February, we see our lowest somewhere up here in the Northeast. You can bet that there's a warm front extending way out into Canada and over the Atlantic. We have this very well-defined cold front dragging in, and this is pulling in the colder air to the east. But not only that, we do see a lot of instability for the deep south here, southeast, mid-Atlantic, and maybe even into a bit of the Northeast here, but especially the mid-Atlantic, southeast, and deep south states there. We are seeing thunderstorms firing up. Wouldn't even be surprised if it's so warm and humid compared to normal that we have some isolated thunderstorms occurring out ahead of that cold front. That happens a lot of times in these types of setups. Not in the winter time. It's not the most common thing, but in the spring and summer, you do see that a lot. And I think that that's what we're seeing on the model here. The humidity is probably going to be enough to cause some unseasonable weather, such as isolated thunderstorm activity ahead of the main cold front, which will bring even more potential thunderstorms. By Saturday, we see that's all moved off of the East Coast, and what we're left with is a cool down, a pretty significant one as well. Your jet stream clearly dipping in the east, ridging up in the west. If I draw another line, it becomes even clearer. So when we follow these lines here, you get this trough in the east, ridge in the west. Now, this will bring a very stark cool down from what we had been seeing. It is worth noting, though, that we do have another storm system moving onshore to the west, and a lot of times that causes colder temperatures in the west, which eventually causes another ridge to develop in the east. So let's see if that happens. Might not, but that is something that we frequently see. And we do see a little bit of cooler weather, some snowfall and overall storminess out west. We still do have the trough in the east, though, although it doesn't look quite as defined. We do see some rising motion throughout the plains, which could be an initial sign that we're warming again. Again, we have plenty of storms and snowfall for the mountains there by Sunday the 9th. Monday the 10th, things get very, very interesting. This storm kind of rises up. So what we're seeing is a little bit less of that trough impact out west. However, we do see a pretty significant cooler trend here across the central states. Imagine it like an upside down wave, and the low is a surfer kind of riding it in. When it catches this edge right here, I'm going to draw the axis, but when it catches that edge, it's going to be able to just kind of like flow in with jet stream really quickly. A lot of times the problem will be is that we try to see a low develop behind the trough like that, and it kind of just gets left behind. Imagine a surfer behind a wave, the peak of the wave, trying to surf it in. You might see it in cartoons, kind of like them riding on the top, but obviously we all know you have to be underneath that peak, kind of right out ahead of the wave to ride it in. So this low is in perfect position to ride that wave in. So let's see what happens. We have a very clear warm front here, which again does not typically feature very much in the way of severe weather or thunderstorms. It's mostly showery and sustained wind or sustained rainfall. It would be a cold front, which we don't really have a really decent one yet, but that could cause some thunderstorms to flare up underneath over the coming hours after this. So let's see if we get that. And we do. So we get a low here, still riding the wave. Again, waves right here. Upside down, so it's kind of hard to, I'd have to flip the image upside down for you guys to see it the way I'm seeing it, or at least imagining it, but it's riding that upside down wave in. Little bit of a dragging cold front underneath, which could feature a smaller area, but semi-impactful area of thunderstorms and severe weather. It could even still bring major severe weather impacts. The size of it doesn't matter. We do see that there's still a warm front, but it's a little stationary. It's kind of just sitting there, so we're not getting that warmth riding way up the East Coast. It's staying pretty marginal, and we do have some mid-Atlantic snowfall occurring here. So again, I've talked about this in days past, but even though you're seeing these warm charts for these long periods of time, there will be colder times, and if we get a storm timed perfectly, you can still see really decent snow systems in this type of pattern that we're moving into. And I think that could be what this model's hinting at. Keep in mind, this is hours 3:30, so take it more as a sign or a trend rather than a specific outlook. None of this is forecasts or outlooks. We're just watching the models together, but please don't take this as gospel. This is mostly just we're watching the trends on the models, and we're watching to see if it encourages these types of storms, which right now it is. Before we move on, there is plenty of snowfall still occurring out west for the Cascades, Sierra Nevada, and Rockies with rainfall in the lower elevations. So storminess really prevailing well into February here. By the time we're reaching overnight, we do see this low moves offshore. Still has kind of a dragging cold front behind it. This could bring some more showers, thunderstorms, even maybe severe weather for spots underneath and behind this low. And then we get a mid-Atlantic special kind of snowstorm. So this, more than we're looking at the specifics, what this tells us is that in this pattern, it is possible to get very significant snow systems like we're seeing here. And I think that should encourage a lot of you that are kind of throwing in the towel for this winter. I mean, especially after the December and January we just had, nobody should be throwing in any towels because this winter is clearly very, very different than recent ones. But still, I think this should work as a piece of encouragement. We do see as we move past that, it does come to an end, and we continue to see the snowfall out west. We actually get a developing really, really intense trough along the west coast there, where everything kind of rises up to the east of it. So you have a little bit of a warmer bubble here across the southern plains and southeast, as opposed to that southwest area. And what we see is a lot of snowfall out west, but also for the plains and Midwest from that as well. GFS model, let's just see where we get agreement and disagreement. Again, everything's a little boring here, but we do get a low developing for Texas, Oklahoma by Thursday, just like we saw on the European model. Severe weather underneath that low. And we continue to see that all the way into the southeast. This is strikingly similar to the European model. So really, really good agreement there. Maybe a little bit more significant snowfall for the northeast would be the main difference than your European model. The west is very, very snowy, just like that European model. We even see some of those lows extending into the Great Lakes and northeast like we see here on Monday the 3rd. So we continue to see pretty cold air and snowfall prevailing. We get another rising storm right around Wednesday the 5th into the 6th. And this one starts off a lot less impactful than the European model showed it. We have a pocket of perhaps thunderstorms, but at least showers here. Some snowfall for the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast around that 5th time frame. But what we see afterwards is a more substantial low developing for the 7th through 8th time frame for Eastern Canada, bringing a massive Canadian snowstorm, by the way. But not only that, a pretty decent dragging cold front with the warm front out ahead. And this would even bring potential stronger showers into thunderstorms, maybe even some severe weather risk because we're so warm and humid out ahead of all of that. So I think that there is potential there with that. We do see a similar mid-Atlantic system. So we see a storm kind of rising up. We saw it rise up from the Gulf here, and it wants to move offshore. I think we're a little less cold on this GFS model. We start out with some snowfall here for parts of the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, but we don't get quite as many impacts from that. We actually end up with more of these kind of like cold front type storms. Even at the very end of the model here on this frame, it's easy to see how we could develop a low here with a warm front and then a dragging cold front there. So we're on our way to developing maybe a 3rd or 4th one right here. So very active on both models is the trend here. Opportunities for snowfall on both models, and definitely an elevated risk when considering that we're looking at February timeframe for that severe weather. Temperatures up and down is the big trend. Total precipitation, we see a massive, massive surge here for the Northwest as it almost seems to never stop. And then these areas impacted by these lows and cold fronts also get a healthy amount of precipitation here coming up. So when we look at the anomalies, above average for parts of the Northwest and also for parts of the Southern Plains into the Mid-Atlantic. There's even areas in the upper Midwest with above average precipitation as well. Overall, a really good look for the nation compared to what we've been seeing. Total snowfall. We end up with tons for the West. No surprise there. Quite a bit for the upper Midwest and Northern Plains area. And then kind of the Mid-Atlantic into the Northeast starting to look a little better. We'll see if these trends continue with that. GFS model, we do get quite a bit of agreement. We get these areas a little bit excluded compared to what we saw on the European model. But we still see huge amounts out west, large amounts for the Northern Plains, up Midwest, Great Lakes, and then even for parts of the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. Although, again, it's a little more exclusive for a little bit further north, but still similar snowfall there. Temperature pattern, again, it's going to be up and down. We're warmer here right now We are going to see a backdoor cold front for areas of the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic here starting Thursday on the 30th, just 2 days from now, and that lasts a whopping 1 day, because here's Friday where we're far above average as far as temperatures are concerned, especially in the deeper reds and kind of browns there, very far above normal. And then we get another backdoor cold front for Saturday the 1st here for the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. This one does last into Sunday the 2nd, but by Monday the 3rd, we're back into the far above average temperature column. By Tuesday, a backdoor cold front is starting up Tuesday the 4th. Wednesday the 5th, a lot of the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast are near normal to below normal again. But you guessed it, Thursday on the 6th, we're way above normal for a lot of the southern plains, Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, Southeast. The darker reds are going to be 10 to 15 degrees above normal. These browns in here, kind of brown grays, that's all going to be 20 to 25 degrees above normal. And then the kind of cream colors turning almost a pinkish red in there, that is going to be 25 to 35 degrees above normal. So you might be wondering, why are you saying that severe weather might happen in the Ohio Valley and Mid-Atlantic areas when this is wintertime? Typically, they're very cold. Well, 25 to 35 degrees above what's typical is exactly how that would be possible. Because at that point, we're talking about likely 60s, even 70s for some of these spots, which is definitely sufficient for thunderstorm activity. Maybe even like 80s as you work your way down into Texas and Oklahoma, or perhaps Tennessee, Kentucky, some of these areas. If we saw a little bit further above normal than this, you might be talking very, very warm, upper 70s perhaps. So very, very warm compared to normal here. As we move towards Friday, that far above normal temperatures kind of reaches more towards the East Coast, all the way up into New England. And then we see a massive cool down for Sunday the 9th, Monday the 10th. And that stays around. We start to see the cold lasting all the way to the 12th here, where this area seems to be where the cooldowns are headed again. So we might move back into a more wintry pattern for the midway point of the month. It kind of needs to be watched. We're going to see as we move through, but that is a big question mark, kind of the 10th through 15th time frame that we're still trying to work out. GFS model here, it's going to be the same ups and downs. We're warmer here for the 29th into the 29th, I guess, exclusively. And then the 30th here, colder, backdoor cold front. Friday the 31st, very, very warm in the east, followed by a Saturday where the northeast cools back down, and even Sunday before we warm back up again for Monday the 3rd. We cool back down for Tuesday the 4th. But by Wednesday the 5th, we're back to the warm air, at least in the southeast. It's kind of a battle of the north and south here, as you can see. Friday the 7th, another huge warm-up comes through, lasting into Saturday the 8th before a bigger cool down moves in. We warm back up for the 10th through the 11th and 12th and 13th. So definitely you can tell why the 10th through the 15th is the bigger question mark here, because everything between the European model and GFS model kind of look the same. You might notice between now and the 10th, it was very similar. And then after the 10th, it's like the European model is super cold in the east, and the GFS model is super not cold, and it's actually super warm. So huge disagreement right around that 10th time frame, maybe like the 8th or 9th, but right around the 10th, huge disagreement. And we're going to have to wait a couple days to know more about that timeline and that time frame in general. So be sure to subscribe. We upload every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.